Hi, everyone. This is Deborah with Let's Get Real About Mental Health. We're talking today about childhood trauma and how much it can really affect your adult as a life. Before before we start talking about the exact going into the traumas or what have you, um, let's talk about the let's talk about how often this occurs. Um, Childhood trauma occurs in more than 60% of adults. So let me say that a different way. More than 60% of adults have claimed that they have had some form of childhood trauma. Now, women and certain races are four times more likely to have a childhood trauma than other demographics. By the age of 16, that's 1/6, almost 2/3 of children have experienced some type of, or at least one type of trauma, or they're going to be calling some potentially traumatic event. What are those potentially traumatic effects? There's so many. It'll take me a little bit here, but let's do a little more of this. At least 1 in 7 children have experienced child abuse or neglect within the year of this moment. At least 1 in 7. From here till next year, 1 in 7 children will have um, experienced some type of abuse or neglect. It is likely that that is very much underestimated. And in 2019, 1,840 children died because of abuse and neglect in the United States. Every day, every single day, more than 1,000 youth are treated for in the emergency room for some form of physical assault. Each day, that's each day, you guys, each day, 1,000 youth. In 2019, one in every five high school students reported being bullied on school property. 8% of high school students have been in a physical altercation within one school year. 14, that's 1/4, 14 youth die in a homicide related incident, and another 1,300 are treated in the emergency room every year from the same or similar type incidences. What is important for us to start thinking about is what can be causing these types of childhood trauma and how do they affect us as adults. If we can't stop the trauma and we can't stop what's already happened to us. We have to start getting on board with what could be done now that we're adults. But first, let me say that it is important that if you know something, say something. Do not ever think that you should mind your own business and not interfere on behalf of someone you feel is being abused, molested, neglected, any of those things, domestic violence. If you know something or think you know something, it's better to say something than to ignore it. Okay, so what kinds of things are we talking about that could be a traumatic event or for a child? Of course, any form of abuse, psychological, physical, sexual, any of that type of abuse is scarring to a child and will absolutely show its rear its ugly head again in adulthood. Community or school violence. Okay, just like we just saw in Texas recently, that's horrible that they are bringing violence to our schools, and 19 children had to die because of something going on in that one person's brain. If you witness or experience some form of domestic violence, so it doesn't necessarily mean that the child is abused, but if the child watches mom or dad be abused, that definitely has a lasting effect on them. A national disaster, or an act of terrorism. Those are going to mark you. Even if you feel like you've gotten over it, things will start to happen in your adult life when you're a little better equipped to deal with those types of trauma. They'll start rearing their ugly heads again. Sexual exploitation. So glad I can say that word. Um, it's sad that we live in a world that this is actually a problem. It's horrible. Young women are being sex trafficked day in and day out, as young as the age of 8 or less. Okay, so this is a real factor. Again, let's fall back on the if you think something is going on, then say something. Okay, refugees of a war or a warlike experience. Military family stressors, such as like deployment or parental loss or injury because of a deployment. Again, we'll talk about physical and sexual assault. Um, again, I don't have it up here, but there's a national rape crisis line. Ladies, if it happens to you, I know you feel shamed. I know you feel horrible. Somehow you think it's your fault. Let me be the first person to tell you it is not your fault. It is absolutely not your fault. And I know it's going to be hard and I know it's going to be embarrassing, but the best thing you can do for yourself or maybe someone else who your assaulter might go after next is to go to the police, report it, go to the hospital, get all of that stuff done, and remember that you are taking your power back by doing that. You're taking the power out of the hands of the person who assaulted you, and you are taking your power back to you. It's hard. I'm not even going to lie. And I'm just going to put that's my opinion. But I hope that you at least consider it if you are found yourself in that situation. Neglect. Neglect. Neglect is a hard one. It hits close to home for me. It's when the people that are supposed to protect you and provide for you in your life don't provide the basic needs. You know, you go hungry, you're without a home, you're just dropped off somewhere for days at a time and don't know if your parents coming back. That's the kind of things I'm talking about. Neglect. Neglect also could be with withholding emotional support or emotional connection from your child, and as well as like showing um, showing physical love like hugs, saying I love you. That can become neglectful when it's something that the child thinks that they need to act a certain way to get that attention when it should be freely given by their parental figures. And the other thing could be like serious life-threatening accidents or illnesses or just really big scary accidents because for a child it scares us as adults. Can you imagine what a 9-year-old's thinking in the backseat of the car locked in the seatbelt and he has to be cut out by the jaws of life? That is seriously traumatizing. And I think that it's important that we recognize how scarring and how traumatic these types of things can be for our children or were for us when we were children. And it's really that's what I'm really here to focus on is that when you start uh I'm sorry, when you start seeing this stuff again as an adult, you're going to start seeing that it has a lot of effects on you, a lot. As you'll see on the banner below, it says that trauma is a risk factor for nearly all behavioral health and substance abuse disorders. Yes, it absolutely is. You will see that people will behave in a certain way to avoid dealing with the emotions brought up or the memories that are being brought up. And I think that's the key thing with substance abuse and with drug abuse is that you're going to start seeing that kind of stuff in adults because adults don't know when these memories show up. You have no idea how to deal with them. You just really don't. So again, just really quick, we'll just touch on it. The childhood trauma can include violence, abuse, growing up in a family with a mental health or substance use problem, toxic stresses. And these toxic stressors can cause the brain to actually change its development and the effect that how the body is going to respond to those types of stress. They're all linked. All of them are linked to chronic health problems, mental health, and substance abuse. And this is also I'm sorry, I just lost my pace on my notes. I'm so sorry, you guys. The thing to remember is that we have to be diligent in realizing that these things can come up from years and years and years ago. I didn't start reliving my emotional. I didn't start reliving my issues with emotional abuse and stuff like that until I was oh, I got all kinds of talk. Hi everyone. I didn't start dealing with my issues from childhood abuse until I was in my mid to late 30s. And I started really seeing the difference in the way that I was able to interact with people. And it took the death of my brother, which is which was one of the very, oh, I think my might be acting up. I'm sorry, you guys. Um, I think the thing is that you have to start realizing that it affects the way that your brain develops as a child. So when you are an adult and you start dealing with those repressed memories or starting to come back into where you can deal with it, you're absolutely going to have um, a different way of looking at things than you did as a child. What might have been super scary as a child may not be as scary as an adult, but you're remembering it from a child's point of view. And that's what really is important. You have to realize that, I'm a big, bad 52-year-old. I've been through 3 births and I can handle anything. Yes, but I wasn't a 52-year-old woman when I was neglected by one of my parental figures. I was a small 5-year-old child who was desperately trying to protect her 3-year-old sister. So that's the way those memories come back to me. They come back to me from the eyes of a 5-year-old. And the thing is that we also start to see with the sorry, you guys, with the change in development of the child's brain, we're going to start seeing things that we'll recognize as an adult, like as an adult, you might not be able to remember all the facts of your memories. It might be selective. You can't remember them because the trauma was too much and it affected the way that you can do your memories. There's a thing called dissociative amnesia, and this is when you have lost your memory of that specific time and place or that event. And what that happens with that is that you don't know what happened. So you form your memories, the way that you connect with other people, the way that you handle yourself in situations. All of that is formed around your brain's attempt to protect you from a different from a trauma that your brain is now wiped out. So, like, you've seen all these movies, you guys, where people will be just triggered by certain things. I wish I could remember the name of the movie, but she was a lawyer and she was trying a case for child abuse, and she could hear the court stenographer hitting her little buttons, tap, 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 and it triggered off a memory. And come to find out, it triggered the memories of her abuse by her father. And she reacted in a violent manner because she was remembering all this abuse that she suffered as a child. And I think that that's really important to remember, because when you are an adult, you're going to process things a heck of a lot different than you did as a child. And the other thing is that you have to start, when we start talking about how we deal with things. Okay, childhood trauma affects the way that you deal with other people. That's just simple. If you start thinking about it, your ability to deal with other people and how sometimes you ever notice, like, you're around somebody and you're like, I just don't get a good vibe off of them. Their chances are that is your body triggering something that your brain has tried to hide from you and saying, hey, no, don't put yourself in that situation. It's a dangerous situation for you to be in. And as an adult, because of those things that happen to us as children, we are not going to be able to feel safe. There'll be a lot of times when you have a lot of inability to feel ease. You can't go into a situation because you don't feel safe. For me personally, I can't do anything alone. I absolutely cannot do anything alone. If I try to go out to dinner by myself, I end up having an anxiety attack. And that's, again, left because I was forcibly separated from my sister when I was 7 and she was maybe 4 or 5, and I was forcibly separated from her. Now, it wasn't for a longer period of time. It was only like 20 minutes, but they dragged us apart kicking and screaming, and that affects the fact that I cannot go anywhere alone. I get such horrible anxiety that I'm never going to be able to get back to where I need to get back to. Another thing that goes right hand in hand with that is, as adults, we develop anxiety and depression, and we're not really sure why. Now, I'm not saying all people with anxiety and depression have these issues because of these childhood traumas, but a lot of them are. Okay. We will things that one of the things that triggers me the most is actually a certain smell. And I'll smell the smell and it always makes me like, ugh, I cannot stand the smell of it. It is liver being cooked. Okay, that is disgusting, first off. Second off, it actually puts me in such a state of heightened anxiety that I begin to react totally irrationally. I'm like, get that crap, but a lot more vulgar, out of my room. I can't smell it. Get it out of my house. Please don't ever bring that back in my house again, because the smell triggered anxiety linked to another memory of abuse and neglect from my childhood. Another really big one for me, and please don't laugh too hard, but it is Laura Scudder's all natural peanut butter. Yeah, my husband brought it home one day and he said, "Hey, I found this all natural peanut butter because I can't eat a lot of sugar." And I took one look at it and I just had this huge memory of my mom, my parental figure, having this Laura Scudder's peanut butter. And my sister and I starving. We had no food in the house, but she had that peanut butter jar, in her room so she could eat that peanut butter. And I freaked out so badly that I was crying, screaming. I threw the peanut butter jar against the wall. My husband had to call my sister and he's like, "What in the heck is going on with your sister? This is what's happening." And she's like, "Oh, get that shit the hell out of the house." She's probably having a repressed memory. And that is when I started to go to therapy for my childhood trauma, because peanut butter, the sight of a peanut butter container, should not do that to you. And it does it to me because of childhood trauma. And I see like someone in our comments says that they have hypervigilance. That is another part of dealing with your childhood traumas. You do have hypervigilance in certain situations or with certain sounds. For me, it's especially sounds. But I know someone who experienced a sexual assault. And for her, if there is too much space between the light posts, if it looks too far away, she can't even walk in the dark, because that's where she was grabbed. She was grabbed in between light posts and drug off and sexually assaulted. I had a friend who had a really, really hard time breastfeeding her own children and being in that manner with her children, which is a natural state for everyone to be in, because she was not only molested by a male figure of her family, but also by a female member of their family. And that was one of the things that they made her do, was suckle to the breast. And for her, she felt like she was molesting her child because that's what was done for her, when in actuality, she was just trying to nourish her child. That same person didn't allow people to play tickle games, with little kids. You know how they love to laugh, and that little laugh that they have when they're babies, it's so awesome. She would not allow those tickle games to happen, because that is how the male person in her life had molested her, with the little tickle, little grab, little this, little that. And it went on for years. And as a child, you don't know that's wrong. It's only as an adult, when you start to see things like that, that you will start to experience flashbacks and stuff like that. And that's when you've got to get help. You have to. I have a number running on my ticker down there on the screen, and it's a national hotline. You can call them and they will refer you to somebody in your area, or they have a line where you put in the zip code and they'll refer you that way to get somebody in your area that can help you and direct you to the right type of therapist. So like when we're talking about hypervigilance, another really common thing that we're going to see, and I am all over this one with capital letters. You can develop something called PTSD, or complex PTSD in my case. And it's when for me, things like the Laura Scudder's peanut butter put me into a place that I didn't even remember it happening for years and years, but it put me back there and I had flashbacks, and I reacted as an adult would react, not as a child would, because as a child, I was completely helpless and I didn't know how to feed me and my younger sister. But as an adult, I got angry and I was like, get this shit out of my house. It wasn't really the peanut butter. I don't even know if the peanut butter is any good because I can't get near it. But the fact is, I took it out. I took it out that way on what was offending me and what was triggering that particular memory. The other thing, you guys, with PTSD, you got to be so damn careful, because even though you're triggered, And I'm not saying you're wrong for being triggered because I get triggered too. But what you have to realize when you're getting triggered and it's not your abuser who is triggering you and it's unintentional, your actions, your actions are going to cause pain to another individual. At least mine do. Mine I come across very violently sometimes with my husband if he triggers me. And I am very guilty. I've given him a couple of black eyes. I've put things through walls and I don't remember it. I'm just told that this happens. And I have learned that I have to apologize for those actions. Even though he triggered me, he didn't know that it was a trigger for me. We were just barely figuring out what was going on with me. And I still felt horrible. I was like, sitting down crying, being all upset. And I'm like, you know what? I have to apologize to my husband because I can't let that person who traumatized me, then I have a flashback. Now I've traumatized another individual. So I think it's important when we're dealing with PTSD and complex PTSD, you just have to be aware of your actions. I'm not saying that you know what you're doing, okay? Because most of us don't. But just be aware of what happens and be aware that you could be passing on that trauma to someone, to a new person, and just be aware of what's going on so that if in the need you need to apologize, you can apologize to them for that. So then I see I have a comment that somebody has complex PTSD. I also have complex PTSD. I have a lot from my childhood, but I spent 20 plus years as a paramedic, and oh boy, do I got a lot from that. And I had a very violent first marriage. So a lot of it comes into play, and there's a whole lot of factors. And that's why my therapists, I have several therapists actually, and I have become best friends because I have to see them at least once a week to keep the ball rolling for me. Another thing that I have that a lot of people will see is an attachment disorder. Now, here's the thing with an attachment disorder, it can go one of two ways. My understanding is this that babies who are not held or loved appropriately, when we're babies, they do never learn the ability to bond with another person. They will be like, just off of being able to bond with that person. They have no idea how to do it because it's a learned behavior, something we're supposed to learn from our parents, from a loving, caring place after our birth. And that's something that actually has to be addressed as soon as possible. It really does. And let me tell you guys, there are some seriously wacky, unconventional therapies out there that just astound me that people would believe them. Before you go wacky or alternative, and you have every right to do that if that's what you choose to do, please just have a good conversation with the doctor and get in to see a psychiatrist and really have a good conversation with them and be friendly with them so you can be open and honest and they can get you to a good therapist and then you can go and explore your options. But please don't put your health at risk or your life at risk just because something sounds like it might be a little bit easier. So the attachment disorder for me, as my therapist likes to call it, I have an attachment disorder with low self-esteem. I was made to not feel like I was good enough ever, and others of my siblings were made to feel like they were good enough or better because of their sex. And for me, my lowest self-esteem and my attachment disorder is that my self-esteem is attached to the man in my life. This would probably explain why I've been married 3 times and have not been really successful in having real healthy relationships until the one that I'm in now. If I'm with a man and he is displeased with me or makes a crude comment about the way I look, I go on a tangent and beat myself up for 20 minutes how fat and ugly I am. And this is a comment that he probably never even thought more than 2 seconds about, but it totally destroys my day. If somebody calls me a bitch, if a man calls me a bitch and it's somebody that I'm in a relationship with, I'm completely devastated. I will seriously cry for hours because I'm like, what did I do wrong? Why did I do this? What did I do wrong to make him treat me that way? And again, it's not anything that he actually did. Well, he shouldn't be calling me a bitch, but it's nothing that he really did, but it's something that was triggered inside of me from a childhood trauma. And, you have to really start thinking about like the reactions that we have. And for me, and for a lot of people, we overreact. We'll have what somebody could, you could say they're childish reactions, because you are like, it's not fair, it's not right, you shouldn't treat me like that. I've even been known to stamp my foot a few times. Not, just don't hold it against me. You can also go into a point where you're going to use a small childish voice. And that right there, that is the key. It made so much sense to me, because your pain and that incident that you're tapping into your brain that's been suppressed or it's been blocked out, and that little childhood voice is coming out, and that little child inside you that still desperately wants approval and love and never got it, it's coming out. And it is so important as adults that we acknowledge that. Yeah, I didn't get what I needed as a child, and it's affecting me as an adult. So how can I fix this? How can I go on to build a better adulthood and learn how to be a better parent for our kids? I think that's one of the things that's really important, is learning how to be a better parent for your kids. Now, I'm sure every single one of you is going to agree with me on this next one. It's constant exhaustion. It doesn't matter how much sleep you get, or if you don't get sleep at all because you have insomnia. I have insomnia. I have to take a lot of medication for it. But we're constantly exhausted and tired because of the battles that we are trying to wage inside our heads. Okay? We're trying to cope in a society where we're almost viewed as we are weak, or there's something wrong with us because we're dealing with trauma and mental health illnesses, or maybe even substance abuse. So it's a constant battle. You have to put on that facade. I think y'all are going to know that facade you put on, that face, you go out in public and you're like, hey, this is me. So when people say, hey, how are you? And they really don't want to know, you just nod and say, yeah, fine. That fake little smile, that is exhausting, you all. It is completely exhausting, because inside you are waging a war and you feel horrible and you're trying so hard to hold it together. Or, in some cases, that one little serotonin molecule that you have left in your brain is just screaming, running around like crazy, saying to you, go get some sun, God damn it, drink some water, not so much caffeine. But I'm tired and I need the caffeine and I just want to go to bed. So you can see where that's creating a constant battle within our own bodies to make us like try to get what we need, but it's like the exact opposite of what we're feeling. Because when I have that exhaustion, I'm just like, I'm so tired, I'm just going to bed. But you know what happens then? I lay in that bed for hours thinking about something that happened in the 4th grade, or even further back when my trauma started, and trying to figure out what I did wrong. It's just a never-ending battle. It is a complete, you just keep running around like a hamster on a the wheel in their cage. Another, again, we kind of touched on this a little bit with the PTSD and stuff like that, but a lot of people who have had a childhood trauma, we're not able to deal with the normal stressors of life. Some of them will just, on days that are really bad, and I know y'all have had these bad days because I've had them, and you're in line at the grocery store, or you're bagging up your groceries and your bag breaks open and it sends you to the ground in tears, because you're like, I just cannot take one more damn thing today. I can't. Okay. That's the kind of reactions that we're talking about. Like, it tips you over the edge. You can't take anymore. And in that moment, it's really easy for me to sit here right now, because I'm feeling pretty good today, and say, just breathe. Just breathe. It's so easy to say that. In the moment, it is not easy, especially when you have 3 kids going, Mom, what the heck? Mom, what's wrong? Mom, what's wrong? Mom, help this. Mom, do this. Mom, do that. But it's super important, you guys. You got to bring it back together. You have to breathe, pick yourself up off the ground, and at least get the kids in the car. Okay? Don't worry about the groceries. Let's just get the kids in the car where they're safe, and then we will be able to breathe and maybe get through this, and that's a really good point. Sadie brought up a really good point, that we respond to the traumas like a child, because we weren't taught, like I said, we weren't taught how to deal with them. We weren't taught that it's acceptable to say, hey, no, this isn't okay with me. I don't like this. don't do this to me and take a stand. We definitely were not taught that way as a child. I was taught to sit down, shut up, and don't speak unless spoken to. And you know what that got me, you guys? That got me locked in a room for 2 days with my younger sister with no food and water. That's what that got me. And yes, one of my parental figures dropped me off into that situation. So, you can see why we are not able to deal with things the way that other adults do, because there's just no way to, there's no way to deal with it. And I'm sorry if I'm going to butcher your name, Usain. I'm saying this is something that should be discussed in families because it is very important. And it's absolutely so important, because I discuss it with my children, because 2 out of 3 of my children have a mental health disorder, which, they always say, hey, thanks, Mom, for. But I talked to them about it a little later than I should have, because I wasn't able to talk about it and be as open and honest as I am now. But I talk about it with them because they have to know that Mom isn't reacting this way because she hates you or something you did, because you put blue on the paper when she asked you to put red on it. No, I'm not upset with that about you. Okay. I am upset because of something that's going on in my own brain. Okay. That is something that I shared with my children. Now, another person said that this is not something they can do. Oh, I don't talk about this stuff openly and honestly with the rest of my family. HR, I don't. One, because my mother, there I did it again. One of my parental figures thinks that they were the best parent on the planet. They were amazing. How could I even say these things? And every time I tried to bring it up with her, she would yell and scream and call me an ungrateful daughter, and I was a liar, and I was making all this stuff up, So that is why, actually, 6 years ago, I cut that parental figure out of my life, because it was so toxic and so horrible. I could not even make a phone call to her on her birthday without feeling sick, because I knew something horrible was going to come from that phone call. Now, don't get me wrong, you guys. I'm saying cut her out of communication. I still have child grief in the fact that she is my mother. She gave me life. So I do things. I do things like, I send her groceries, I buy her what she needs, but I cannot have that woman in my life. She makes me a totally different person. And it's not worth it anymore. It just isn't worth it. And as far as like my other parental figure is concerned, he's in total denial that anything like this happened to me. Because he feels like he made the best decision and let girls grow up with that particular gender of person and their gender of person, and that's what needed to be done at the time, when in actuality he put me into a very abusive situation. But he denies it. And you know what, at 75 years old, I'm not even going to argue with him anymore, because it's just too hard to argue, because man, he is one stubborn man. If he doesn't think you're telling the truth, he will actually just call you out and go, you're making that up. And I'm like, oh great, let's not do that. So what was I gonna say? I lost my place in my notes again. Sorry, you guys. I'm kind of nervous about this because it's like one of the first times I've actually had lots of people watching me. So the big thing also that happens to us, and it's so sad, you guys, and is that sometimes the trauma is just too much. It's just too much. And when people live back that trauma, like we'll say for a sexual abuse of a child, when you're 16, 17 years old, you're going through all these hormonal changes, and you're a teenager, and life just sucks, because everything's changing. But then God forbid you remember that you were abused by your uncle for like 5 years. And it completely changes the way that you can even look at yourself. Because when you remember those things, you go through all the things that anyone who has survived a sexual assault will go through. You go through the shame, the guilt, the disgust, all of that stuff. And at 16, you're not capable, I don't think, of actually putting together, yes, but I was a child. I didn't have the tools to protect myself. Okay. And we all know teenagers act a little bit irrationally sometimes. But it is really unfortunate. We're talking like 1,400 young adults, youths kill themselves because of a childhood trauma every year. And in the grand scheme of life, I guess people say 1,400 isn't that big a deal, but 1,400, that is a lot of children to me. 1,400 children had no way of getting the help they needed, or they weren't diligent enough in getting the help they needed to the parents, I mean, weren't diligent enough to let them heal. Because number one, you got to acknowledge that there's a problem. You have to acknowledge that something actually truly did happen. And that's the first freaking thing. First thing. You have to acknowledge it. And it's not even the victim that has to acknowledge it. You guys, we're talking about parents having to acknowledge that they did wrong by their children. And I don't know about you guys, but sometimes, the old parents aren't real good at remembering things how they actually happened. I've gotten a lot of, "You were a child. How do you know?" Well, I was there. And I've spent a lot of time in therapy to uncover where this stuff is coming from. And I think that, we have to find a way. And it's unfortunate. HR and I had to be drastic. We had to cut a parent off because they're just so toxic, and they won't acknowledge you. They won't acknowledge your existence, let alone the trauma that they created for you. And I'm trying to think of a way to say this. Sometimes those parents who failed you as a child were failed also. Now, does that mean that it's right that they failed to do these things for you or protect you in the way they should have? No, it doesn't. Should it make you maybe a little more understanding? Maybe a skosh. I have a hard time. I know that did happen to one of my parental figures, but I have a very hard time not just holding her accountable for everything. And I've heard what happened to her. I have heard from other family members she won't acknowledge it. But I think therein lies the problem, that she won't acknowledge that there was an abusive system in her life that caused her to be the way she was with my sister and I. HR, I am so sorry to hear that. I actually made an attempt myself, but it was much later on in life, and I just had revealed a very, very uncomfortable memory. And yeah, I took a lot of pills, and thank God I was on the phone with someone who cared enough about me to call the police and say, "Hey, you got to get her to the hospital." And you know what? There's no shame in that, HR. I learned from it. I have become a stronger person for it. And I do things like this to help other people. They're like, maybe not have to go that far before they can get some resolution or some closure from the trauma. All right. So we've talked about recognizing the trauma and what we're supposed to do. Oh, thank you, student Dr. Ben. I was much older, HR, actually. I was in my 20s when it happened to me. So let's talk about, so we've acknowledged that something did happen to us. And the first step is acknowledging it and saying that we need help. We need help with something. And I hate to keep piling on the experiences, but I've not had a whole lot of luck with some of the people in my life. I had just lost my brother. I think I was 25 when I lost him. I lost my brother at 25. He and I were stepbrother and sister. We were 8 months apart. So to say we were close is a gross understatement. I lost him to a senseless act of violence. And I was so depressed and so sad. I couldn't get out of bed for days. It was horrible. And I remember looking at my husband at the time, and it's not my husband that I have today. I remember looking at him saying, "I need help. I need help. I can't care for my children. I can't get out of bed. I need help." And he just looked at me and said, "What are you talking about?" You need pills? Are you depressed? I said, yes, I'm very, very depressed. He goes, pills are for weaklings. Pills are for weaklings. That's what the man said to me. I was grieving the death of my brother, and I was coming to realize that I have a big problem with that depression. I've had major depressive disorder since I was 17, but that the grief of my brother put me into a tailspin that was like no other. And he said that to me, and I remember thinking, after I quit crying and blaming myself for everything, of course, thinking, what in the fuck, excuse my language, what in the fuck am I doing with this man? What am I doing with this man? Well, needless to say, we got divorced. And when we're in the the final signing of our papers and stuff like that, he takes out a pill and he's going to take a pill. And I said, oh, what's that? Are you sick? Are you okay? Because I'm still a caring person. I can't be married to the man, but I don't want him to die. And he goes, oh, it's antidepressants. Those of you who know me from being on podcasts or streams with you know that my back went up. Okay. And I just remember at that point in time, I looked at him and I said, well, I'm really sorry that our divorce is causing you depression. I hope that you feel better. And I want you to know that I remember the day that you told me pills were for weak people. But you know what? I'm not going to call you weak because what we're going through is traumatic. I said, but do know, and a little petty of me, I said, do know that you will always know from this point on that I'm a way better person than you are, because I would never do that to another human being. No one deserves that kind of crap. So Yazin, I hope I said that right. I don't think you actually can adapt to living with the people who have traumatized you. It's just my personal opinion. I just don't think it can happen. Because it's nothing like you would just get re-traumatized day after day after day. And if they do have a good day and they're not traumatized you in the here and now, then you're going to start remember things that have traumatized you in the past. I have not been successful with living with anybody that has traumatized me like that. I have had to cut ties, and maybe I've had to cut ties pretty harshly, but I just have not had any success with it. I would think that if that's what you're trying to do, I would recommend you get a whole boatload of therapists, because you're going to need therapists that specialize in a whole lot of things, because I have one for early childhood trauma. I have one for my PTSD, and I have one for just general well-being check-ins. So I have 3 therapists on my team, and that's what I've had to do to be successful in recovering from childhood trauma. So another thing that I really wanted to talk about, and it hits super home for a lot of people, and I promise I won't keep you guys much longer, but the biggest, in my opinion anyway, one of the biggest things that we're going to find that childhood trauma does to us is it makes it so that we cannot form a healthy relationship as an adult, because you're always looking for the shoe to drop. You're never going to find your happiness because you're always waiting. You're always going to be on guard, back to being hypervigilant of when that person is going to let you down, just like your abusers did. Okay. You're going to be happily married. You're so happy, and you are, you're just in this great place in your marriage, and you're just waiting, and you're just waiting, and you're just waiting. And then one day you have a fight like every normal couple will have. And you're like, that's it. Shoe dropped. He betrayed me, just like every other man in my life has done to me. That's what I'm talking about when I say unable to form a healthy relationship, because a healthy relationship is, give and take on both sides. And people say, oh, it's 50-50. No, it is not 50-50. It is 100%, 100%. Because some days I can only give you 30 because I'm dealing with my own crap. And that's why I need you to pick up, I need my partner to help me out and give that extra, 70%. Okay. And he might have an off day, and I need to come in and pull the weight that day. And that's what a healthy relationship should look like. But again, as someone who's survived childhood trauma, I always tend to hold just a little bit of myself back so that I am always protected. I feel like I have to protect myself because I don't trust anybody else to be there for me. And now this is not now. I have to tell you, I've been married for 21 years, and it's gotten a lot better. The more therapy I get, the better it gets. And I think that, I'm sorry, I was caught, a comment just caught my eye. And I am, wow, Sadie, I feel like the situation you just put up on in the chat would devastate me on so many levels, because you were very young, and then, people who went to church with them and all, you know, I think that's a big pet peeve of mine, is that when abusers are hidden behind the church. Well, he did this, but we're going to send him to church counseling. Okay, is your church counselor a trained therapist, a trained professional? No? Then don't send your person to them. Do not send your child to them. Do not send the abuser to them. Send the abuser to the police department where they need to be. Okay, and get your victim into appropriate counseling with an appropriate professional, because you can't. You can say, I'm going to hide it, and the church is doing this and the church is doing that. Well, honest to God, let's look at it. Let's look at the biggest offender. Now that I've gone on a tirade, look at the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church has done nothing but hide a bunch of old pedophiles for years and years and years and years. They put them in retirement homes where old priests go to die. Well, what about your victims? What about paying for your crime? They don't even acknowledge that they did anything wrong. So how the hell are they supposed to find the victims and get them the help that they need? As you can tell, I'm really not happy about that whole situation with the church. Sorry. Okay. So we've talked about doing, right on, Sadie, right on. We have to acknowledge that we have a problem. Okay. We have a problem. We're getting our help. And again, you're going to go back into something I already mentioned. We have to be so patient with ourselves, you guys. If it takes you 30, 40 years, 20, 30 years, whatever it is, to start to remember the traumas that happened to you as a child, please be patient and kind to yourself. Don't criticize yourself. Don't overly criticize yourself because you can't remember everything, or you react in a way that other people think is unacceptable. Be patient and take the time. Take the time when you have those things happen. Please take the time to say, okay, why am I acting like this? What is going on in my life that caused this reaction? Because if you take the time to acknowledge, okay, I might have overreacted there, and you take the time to acknowledge that, and you look back and you find an area that you feel is responsible for that reaction, if you're capable, you're going to be one step closer to healing, one step closer to being able to look at the situation and go, you know what? I was not responsible for that. I was a child. I was put in a place of where I was not protected by those who should protect me. And the other thing that this horrible self-criticism that we have for ourselves, and it leads to, of course, those self-destructive thoughts. I know what happened to me and I just can't get past it. So what the heck is the point? What is the point? Well, the point, my friends, is that you are a valuable human being who walks this earth. That is what the point is. You are a person who walks this earth who was a victim. Okay. You need to be patient, kind, and love yourself, because you are here and you are needed here. And when we have those thought patterns, self-destructive, the other thing that happens is that we get into a self-hatred mode. And when I say you all know what I mean by self-hatred, because you react a certain way and you're like, why did I do that? I'm so stupid. I'm so dumb. Why did I do that? I knew better. I knew better than to react that way. Again, that's a retraining process. You really have to get in with the therapist and start the retraining, and I do a lot of, I can't remember what the word is right now, but like every morning, okay, every single morning without fail, I tell myself, I am beautiful, I am important, and I have value. Because there have been many times in my life where I have not felt like I had value, but I absolutely have that. I have value. I have so much value in this world. And how I choose to, like through my job, through my friends, through supporting other people, I bring value to this earth. And I will never let another one of my um, tormentors, I guess you could say, steal that power from me. It will never happen ever again. And HR, I know what you're talking about with playing the memories over and over again in your head, because there are a few memories I can't get rid of either. And to the point where they cause me nightmares and I have flashbacks about them. And that's why I had to go into the counseling, specific counseling for PTSD, because it was more than just the occasional nightmare. We're talking about probably once or twice every week and a half or so, I will wake up screaming and punching and kicking, and my poor husband. So I know it's hard to shake those memories. It really is. And it actually takes me, I'd say, a good couple hours to come down, because you wake yourself up, you're in a heightened state, then you got to calm yourself down, you got to be able to take yourself somewhere else. But then when you take yourself somewhere else, that memory is free to flow in your head, and you just have to try to get through it. I know for me, HR, I got an emotional support dog. He's a little bit of an asshole, but that's okay. He loves me, and he knows when I'm in trouble, so he will be he'll come and love up on me, and it makes it a little easier for me to deal with that. Okay. Oh, this is my favorite one. Thank you for bringing that up. Yasin. I know I'm mispronouncing it, but thank you for bringing that up, because that absolutely drives me freaking insane. Stop crying. Stop playing the victim. Man up and get on with your life. First off, I'm not playing the victim. I am a victim. I was a victim. Okay. I'm not playing at anything here. Second off, if I ever hear anyone tell a man to man up because you shouldn't be feeling these emotions, I will punch him in the face for you. I will. Because who's to say that men can't feel their emotions? Men are get as traumatized just as women do. They have these traumatic memories that they have to deal with. How the hell else are you supposed to deal with them? By crying. You have to cry. You got to let it, you got to cry to get all that pent up anger and frustration and everything out, I'm sorry. I just read another part that said, they're not giving, and it's a valid point, they're not giving you time to heal. They're absolutely not giving you time to heal. And those people are the people in your life that you need to either not talk about the situation with until you are absolutely in a place where you can, because you control the narrative. Other people do not control the narrative when you are trying to heal. It is your narrative for you to heal with, your timeline, not anybody else's. Anybody who tells me you need to just get over it, well, I'll tell you what, you be over being 5'2". And when you can figure out how not to be 5'2", I'll figure out how to get over the issue that happened to me, because it happened. It's not going to go away. You can't change it. You just have to heal from it. Stop focusing on just surviving and learn how to live your life. Okay, so that's an absolutely stupid thing to say, because in order for me to live my life, I have survived my trauma. I survived. I'm here as an adult. I survived it. Now I have to heal from it. And when I heal from my trauma, then I can move on and live a more rich and fulfilling life. I mean, you don't have to be completely healed, because I don't think any of us are ever going to be 100% pure. It's all done. But while you're healing, you get to start enjoying life again. You get to start living and enjoying other things in life. It's not like you just stop right here. Okay, I was sexually abused as a child. I'm all over it. I'm just going to step on and I'm going to live my life. No, these things affect you so much. And for somebody to say that to you, I'm going to venture to say that they've never had the kind of trauma that you've had, HR, because anybody who says that, I think that they're lying if they say they've had trauma. I don't think they're either that. I'm sorry, not lying. Apologize, not lying. I think they're in denial. I think they're in denial and they're just pushing it under, and they haven't started to, they haven't even started to acknowledge or heal from their own trauma. Oh boy, Sadie. I had something like that with my first husband. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and share it. And I'm just going to preface this by saying this might be a little bit graphic or a little much for some people to hear. It does involve a sexual assault. I had an ex also, my first husband, and we all know he was abusive because I told you that earlier. But he would um, tell me that we had intercourse. He goes, "Oh, well, you're just half asleep. You don't remember it." And for a long time, I honestly thought that it was I must have given him consent. It mustn't be an assault. I must have just been half asleep and I don't remember it. It was years later when I started seeing my therapist that I realized that he had raped me multiple times because half awake, or let's say fully asleep and you just decided to, I didn't give consent. And without consent, it's still assault. And that's a whole nother thing that I can go on for talking about violence in a marriage and stuff like that, because that's a humdinger and I'm sure that could take up a whole nother show. Um, yeah, HR again, that's unfortunately that is exactly what a lot of people think. And I actually get this. I was speaking with student Dr. Ben the other day about it. Because some guy was threatening to troll my show and stuff like that. And I was like, and Ben's like, so what? Troll me. I don't care. Um, I've had people tell me that I do this show because I want sympathy. I do this show because I want people to look at me and go, "Oh, that poor girl," and give me sympathy, or support me because they're like, "Look how much she's overcome, and we should be supportive of her." Um, and I've had to set many people right about that, and I've actually had a couple of relatives, unfortunately, go, why are you spreading all the dirt on our family out there?" Well, I didn't spread the dirt. Somebody else did the dirt, and the dirt got spread around and buried. I'm just bringing it back up to the surface. Got to roll to till the land, people, and get all that juicy dirt out into the air so that people can heal from it. And it's ridiculous because what you want is exactly what you said, HR. You said you want to be an open and honest person, and you want to heal. And if they won't listen to you, or they're saying you just want sympathy, again, I would tell you, get a good therapist you can talk to. And if you can't find a therapist, find a friend who's going to sit and talk to you without judgment. And that's really important, without drama. That's exactly right, Sadie. And it's actually quite disturbing that the church does say that. The church does say that a woman being married to a man, that she's given consent. And that's sad. I know I can't remember what court case it was, but they did prove that a married man can rape his wife. A man can rape his wife. I know, but it was proven in a court case, and I don't remember what court case that was. And HR Sadie brought up a really good point here. They don't want you to speak about it because they don't want other people to see the trauma they did to you. They don't want other people to be aware of what kind of a human being they actually are. Because if I sat here and I didn't speak about my trauma and I never said anything, the world would go on believing that my parental figures were these great church going people who never did anything wrong and just raised a rebellious daughter who had to just buck the system on everything. And that's not what's happening. And that's why I think that's probably one of the things that are why I do this, is because I want people to know that it's out here. It's so, it happens to a lot of people. Like I said in the beginning, 60% of adults today have experienced some form of childhood trauma or not. And HR, that's fine. You can dump your trauma in this chat all day long. That's what I set this thing up for, so we could talk about it and get it out in the open, because it's better to talk in a place that you feel safe and start to your healing process, and to hell with what everybody else thinks. You're in a place that you're safe, and you're welcome to continue to chat about it all you want, because you're safe and you want to heal, and I want to help facilitate that. That's what we're doing here, in my opinion, anyway. Okay, so we're going to touch on something really HR has been talking about it. So you have to be really resilient to criticism. You really have to Understand that some people are not going to accept what you're saying, or they're going to do what HR is talking about. They're going to say, "Oh, you're just looking for sympathy. You want attention. You want something that." Okay. Well, here's the deal. You be resilient and you work on you. And it's not easy. Y'all know that. It's not easy to sit and have these horrible thoughts and remember these horrible things that happen to you, and go along every day, each day, one day at a time, right? And work on you and say, hey, today I'm going to help myself. Today I'm going to do this for myself. And then have somebody call and talk to you, and then just start, bashing you and criticizing what you're doing to with your healing process. And HR, I don't know if it's going to help you or not, but this is what I do. I absolutely 100% well, if I lived anywhere other than Oregon, it would be a lot easier to do this first thing. I have to sit out in the sunshine 15 minutes a day. I have to. Even if I can't do any more than drag a lawn chair out front and sit in my pajamas with my hair sticking out 6 ways to Sunday because I just got out of bed, I have to sit in the sun for 15 minutes a day, because that's going to help my vitamin D level, which is going to help everything else that I needed to help in my body to help with my depression. And if I can get a handle on my depression just one day at a time, that helps my healing process. That makes me feel stronger and able to deal with a lot of the other stuff coming at me. And the other thing that I absolutely have to do every single day without fail is my affirmations. I must do my affirmations every day. And like I said, I say I'm beautiful, I have value. And sometimes when I've had a bad phone call from somebody, they're criticizing my healing process, I will tell myself in the mirror, it is your healing process. You're successful in your healing process, and what they say does not matter, because it's not their healing process. It's mine or it's yours. And that's what's important, is that people realize that you're going to get criticism when you're trying to heal. And they're going to be people who want to stop you from healing, because then you're going to remember all the crap that they did to you. But you're not in this for anybody else. You're in this 100% for yourself. And it's okay in this instance to be selfish. It is completely okay to be completely selfish, because you're trying to heal yourself with the help of therapists, friends, wherever you want to go to get that help. But you can be selfish. If today you cannot handle any phone calls from your family, shut off your ringer or screen your calls. Take that time for yourself to go, oh, today is not the day. Today is not the day. Okay. And other days you'll be able to handle phone calls from them. But it is okay for you to say to them, hey, you know what? I'm no longer comfortable with conversation, and I don't like the things that you're saying to me. I'm not just going to stand here and take it anymore. I am definitely going to say something to you. You are crossing my boundaries. And that was the next thing I wanted to talk about, was setting up boundaries. You have to set up healthy boundaries for yourself, especially with when you have people who have abused and they're still abused you and you're still in your lives. You have to set up those boundaries, and no one else has to understand those boundaries. No one has to get those boundaries. Nobody is allowed to make those boundaries but you. You are the only person involved in the boundary setting system for you. You and you alone. Okay. And that's super important, because I have boundaries that I've set up from my years in an abusive marriage. There's one boundary. If you cross that boundary, we are done. There will be no more friendship between us because you cross that boundary. And the simple thing of, I'm not going to take phone calls from this person because I don't feel like it today. That's a boundary. Set it and stick to it. And you might feel bad at the time, say your mother's calling you and you're like, no, I can't today. I put a boundary up for myself. I'm not talking to my mother today. And you might feel bad and guilty when she's ringing you up every 5 minutes, because that's what moms do. But then at the end of the day, I want you to look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what? She didn't cross my boundary today. That is a big win, a huge win. And that's important, that we start acknowledging the wins in our lives, because it is so hard to heal, but we need to accept the wins as well. And you start with small things, you guys, totally small things. I got out of bed today. I sure as heck didn't want to today. No, I got out of bed. I took a shower. I went to work. I came home and sat on my butt because I didn't have anything else to do. I didn't think. And then I came down and I started my live stream. It's late, but I started it because I knew that was something I needed to do for myself. Look at that. I have 5 wins today. 5 wins, and I wasn't feeling very good when I got out of bed today. And the other thing you need to do is reward yourself for those wins. Reward yourself. You're horrible. You're having a horrible day. You just want to pull the covers back over your head. But you get out of bed. You put on a sweatshirt and some sweats and with a hoodie so you can hide the fact that you didn't do your hair. And you trot your little behindy down to coffee or soda or whatever it is, tea, and reward yourself because you won today. You got out of bed. And by rewarding yourself and believing that you won today, you are taking your first steps to healing from those trauma and that stuff that was keeping you in bed. Because it has to be a small step, one step at a time. And you know what? Before you even say it, I'm going to tell you, I know some days I feel like I took 5 steps forward one day and then I took 10 back. And that's just something that's going to happen with those of us who have a mental health disorder. Yeah, life is kind of a roller coaster, okay? But even on those days when you take those 10 steps back, you still got out of bed. Did you put your makeup on today? Did you do your hair? Did you call somebody who supported you through everything you're going through and say, hey, thank you for supporting me. Thank you for being that person for me. That's a win, you guys. That is a huge win for all of us trying to struggle through this healing process. And that is probably the most important thing I want you guys to take away from this. If you take away anything, take away that. Start rewarding yourself because you've come a long way. You have come a long way in your healing process. Even if you just started yesterday, you acknowledge that you need help and you took the road, you're taking the second step in the second day to get that help. Those are all wins. And we just, I think, are so conditioned to think, well, everything has to be perfect and everything has to be this certain way. And we just have to get over it. Like they're telling HR and they're telling Sadie, get over it, move on, just live your life. I am living my life. I'm living my life by healing. And by healing, I'm living a better life. And that, I think that's so important. I just feel like I made a profound statement there, but I didn't quite want it to be quite that profound, I don't think. I know, I take it back. I do want it to be that profound. And when we start acknowledging those wins that we have every day, we start on an act of self-acceptance. And we start realizing that I'm okay. I am going to be okay. Today, I showered. I'm clean. I may be a little bit sad and I may be having memories or I might be really depressed, but you know what? I'm clean and depressed. Okay. And we start to love ourselves more. And I think that is a big step in healing is accepting that the person we are did not come from circumstances in which we would wish on anybody. And that's wrong. It is wrong. It's absolutely wrong. There's nothing right about it. But we are the people who we are. And that's a pretty good thing because we're trying to heal and we're trying to live our best lives for us. And I think that learning to love yourself is a huge thing. It is a huge thing. Now, I'm 52 years old. Can I tell you absolutely without a doubt, I love myself every single day of my life? No. Nope. There are moments when I want to rip my hair out, pull a Britney Spears and shave my head, but I don't. I've learned just sit down, breathe, think about it, do something enjoyable. I'm going to turn up some music, some really loud, bad 80s hairband music, dance around the house like a crazy person and feel better, and then attack the situation again. So, that's learning how to make yourself feel better is a big thing too. Well, y'all, I've had you on here for over an hour talking about this, and I cannot tell you how important it is, how important it is to me, or how fantastic it is that you guys join me in the comments. And if you liked what I had to say today, I would really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe to my channel. It's Let's Get Real About Mental Health. My name's Deborah Nichols. And I really, really hope that you guys have a fabulous night. Remember to be kind to each other. And I'll see you next week. Night, all.